Hello, good morning, everyone. We are now 12 people in that Zoom, but maybe we should wait just a little while longer to let more people join us before we start. Okay, so it's now 11. I think we can start. We are 13 of us, which is a quite good number. And I see that you're already starting to fill in the note-taking document. That's really good. I guess the most of you have participated in a number of these webinars already. So I guess you're familiar with the concept, but maybe I can just quickly take you through what we are going to do here today in any case. So welcome to this webinar, which is the last one actually in the series of six webinars, all based around the recommendations of the Turning FAIR into Reality report. This webinar will be around FAIR incentives and metrics. So we have 2 priority recommendations and 2 supporting recommendations. So I'm fairly sure that we will be able to go through all of these in an hour time. So let's aim for that so that you are freed up after that, because we've really had to engage in quite many of these webinars already and put a lot of time into these and preparing for them as well. My name is Josefine Nordling. I'm from CSC IT Center for Science in Finland, and I work in FAIR, mostly with FAIR practice related tasks. And in addition to that, I work in IOSC Nordic as well on FAIR data, where mostly we have, as you probably already know by this point, we have been doing some FAIR maturity evaluations among a wide range of Nordic and Baltic data repositories. And in addition to that, I also work for a network called Knowledge Exchange, where I also have been doing quite a lot of work around research evaluations and incentives and rewarding people for open scholarship contributions. So this particular pillar was really close to my heart, so to say. So this will certainly be an interesting one. And as a rapporteur, we have Ilona von Stein from DANS. Maybe you can say hello quickly.
Hi everyone, I'm Ilona von Stein, working at DANS, also involved in FAIR is FAIR, the work package on evaluation and certification of data repositories and also of individual data sets within those repositories. Welcome everybody.
Thank you, Ilona. And I guess it's worth also mentioning that that the spreadsheet is throughout the session, but also after the session open for everyone to edit. So it might make it easier for you to add the correct information into the correct sort of columns and rows. So feel very free to both add information onto the spreadsheet as things progress and you come up with things that you haven't thought of adding before, but also to the note-taking document directly. That would be really helpful. But as we just said, Ilona will act as the rapporteur today and will be adding as much as she can. But if there is some information that you find that is incorrect to some point, then just go there and make the needed modifications. Okay, so I think since we have had a number of these webinars already, and I think most of you have been taking part in most of these, I guess we can skip the introduction round part today, and we'll save up some time for discussions instead. Because I see many familiar names here among the participants. So maybe what I'll do is just quickly share my screen and show a few of the slides I've prepared. Okay. Okay, so now you should be able to see my presentation here. This is, as you know, it's the picture or the illustration incorporating all the different FAIR pillars in the report Turning FAIR into Reality. So if you start looking in the upper side, you see the first one is on defining, the second action is on implementing, and then the last one is on embedding and sustaining. So the incentives and metrics pillar is next to last. So you can see that it's right beside investment in FAIR. So it's on the embed and sustain part. So this is actually something that is also in the recommendations. So it says that the actions here should be reviewed in time. So we should embed it into the scientific community and have it sustained, but also remember to review the metrics and the attributes, indicators that are in there from time to time as things evolve. So that is maybe the basic lesson of this kind of particular pillar. So yeah, that's the part where we're focusing on today. And I think these recommendations are pretty straightforward when it comes to the things that needs to be in place in order to go into a broader sort of context of doing scientific and domain-specific implementations when it comes to FAIR metrics. So the first recommendation is on develop metrics for FAIR digital objects, recommendation number 12. So a set of metrics for FAIR digital objects should be developed and implemented, starting from the very basic common of descriptive metadata, PIDs, and access. The design of these metrics needs to be guided by research community practices, and they should be regularly reviewed and updated. So I think we can go directly to the spreadsheet after having seen these to see what has been done within the EOSC working groups, but also in the EOSC 5B projects and the cluster projects, and also what additions our FAIR champions have to say in this respect. So I think we can just start by looking at the first row here, which is in this case the example from FAIR's FAIR. So we do have quite a lot of deliverables around this topic coming out from the work package 4. So do you, Ilona, want to give some information around these FAIR?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can jump in.
Okay, great.
So the broader context of our work package, where all these deliverables are coming from, is about evaluation and certification of 1, data repositories, and also on the other hand, evaluation and certification of 2, the individual data sets within those trustworthy repositories. And what we do actually is we try to align repository certification requirements with the FAIR data principles. And then we hope to see how repositories are able to support or FAIR data, or how they are able to enable FAIR data. And one specific pillar in that broader context is our work on evaluation of object fairness. So that's where we are running 2 parallel pilots that help the assessment of individual data sets. And as you can see, deliverable 4.1 has been released, and it's a first draft recommendation on requirements for FAIR data sets in those certified repositories. And it will be, we will keep it as an iterative system. So we will launch, test, adjust where needed. So this is also can be seen in the further outputs. We will have this summer, we will have a report on that. And also then we're jumping to, it will be this month, actually at the end of this month, where we will release a first initial version of a repository certification mechanism that also takes into account the FAIR alignment of repository requirements and FAIR data. And then we jump all the way to mid 2021, where we will follow up and test and adjust where needed. This is just very short. I have more people from the work package in-house, so if anybody wants to add, they are more than welcome. But we also have a lot of other projects to cover. So, and if there are any questions, please let me know as well. Thanks.
Hey, thank you, Ilona. That's really nice, and you're doing quite a lot around this topic. Okay, so let's move on to the next one in line. It's the EOSC FAIR working group. So at least we have Francois.
Yes, hello. The photograph in the participant list is not mine, as you will see, as you have seen. I don't know how to change it, so I will try to fix it for another call. So the metrics and certification, the EOSC working groups do not have the luxury to go beyond the end of the year, and we also have to provide our reports for an event in October. So we have a short timeline, and the idea is to review what is done by others, basically, especially in the domain in which I chair a task force, which is metrics and certification, which is exactly the theme of recommendation 12. So we are working on a recommendation on metrics for FAIR. We have an interim, I forgot to write it, but I wrote it elsewhere in the spreadsheet. We have an interim report, and we will produce an updated version, I hope, before summer for review, for comments by the community. So we take into account the work of the RDA data maturity model working group, and of course, FAIR is FAIR work on metrics also. So liaison is well established with people from work package and also work package 2 from FAIR is FAIR. There is something to note, which is that there is an ongoing work on the definition of FAIR software, and there is a working group, an RDA working group, RDA Force 11, and the Research Software Alliance working group, which has a charter open for comment in the RDA, I think, since yesterday for 1 month. So things are moving on in that domain. One of the lessons learned from what we have seen, and also, I guess, from what I have seen from the RDA working group on FAIR data maturity model, is that communities have different FAIR practices, and they give different weights to the FAIR areas, and also to the criteria which have been defined. So this may not be fully taken into account in the proposed metrics, and it will be absolutely essential to gather feedback on the implementation of a metrics from different communities, and also on the possible adverse effects for some of them. The other day, I remember Mark Allen made a comment about there are things which are working and they have been built with some effort, and it's useful, at least to say the least, that they continue to work as a result of all these things and the EOSC. So one consequence of all of this is that there is a need to define the governance for metrics maintenance. I have seen that the RDA working group is proposing to have a maintenance group, which would be good. The session, we are organizing a session of the EOS consultation day, which is next Monday, on governance, maintenance, and sustainability of metrics and PIDs. It's in the title, but it means PID policy. So what happens when we finish our work? We make a recommendation, they go to the EOS executive board, and then what happens?
Okay, thank you, Francois. So we'll be making sure that we will, as many of us, be looking at the report that you will be having as an open consultation. Did you say in May, June?
No, I think it will be, we hope before summer, the next version of the report.
Okay, yeah.
There is one which has been online for several months now, but it's really an interim report. Just setting up the scene of who is working on what. And there are a few preliminary comments, but I think there will be, I guess, part of, in particular, the work package for team of Fair is Fair knows about the report, I guess at least.
Okay, thank you. And so I see we have some blank fields here for the other EOSC working groups. Maybe they're not applicable for this particular pillar. So the next one in line is the EOSC Nordic. I see we have at least Andreas here today.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Good morning. Yes, well, I feel that I've said this in several of these workshop meetings now, but yes, this is where our evaluation work fits directly in with the pillar. And so what we are doing is basically reusing the tool of Mark Wilkinson and the 22 generation 2 indicators to use it as a tool to evaluate a large sample of repositories and data sets. And we intend to actually monitor that throughout the project period. And we're not using it as a sort of a way to punish repositories. It's more as a guideline for those repositories that wish to make efforts to become fairer. They can use the results of the evaluation as a guideline on how to address certain aspects of the fairness that come out of the result of the evaluation. And so our focus has really been to make the tool to make the evaluator a tool to improve on your own repository with as much feedback as possible. And so we have worked closely with Mark Wilkinson to both test and improve the performance of the various indicators during the last 6 months, and and we now feel that we are at a stage where the output should be quite helpful to repositories that wish to address issues, and all of this work is now being written up in delivery 4.1, which is due by the end of August 2020. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, a good point that you made, that it's not an act of criticism it's yeah, so measuring things is is quite often seen as a risk and can be sort of confronted with reluctance by the objects that are being assessed. But we should also always in these aspects point out that it's mainly something that is seen as an opportunity for improving things rather than just criticizing. So that's something that we need to be really, really specific about when it comes to assessing data repositories and services and how researchers perform. Let's move on to the next one, which would be in this case, NI4OS Europe. It's also Andreas who has written a status update on this. Do we have him on the call today? Okay, I think he isn't here, but it's pretty straightforward what he has put into this document regarding the update on this point. So basically what they are doing there is that they are quite heavily relying on already existing studies and frameworks and tools available for assessing FAIR using FAIR metrics. So, and they will also be providing some support for the service providers as they go along. That's maybe what the main points are here. The next one would be expands. Do we have Abigail on the call?
Hello, yes, I am here.
Hello. Nice.
I've just actually just added this in. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
I've only actually just added this in, but because it occurs to me that one of our deliverables is a draft data policy framework for photon and neutron facilities. We'll also be doing a final one, I think, about a year later than the one that's due this August. But one of the things that we've been doing in conjunction with PANOSC is using the FAIR maturity model to evaluate the data policy for fairness. And one of the things that we've recently been discussing actually in relation to our deliverable and expands is that we might actually write that evaluation up as a possible use case, because I think it's still open for feedback. Is that correct? That FAIR maturity model. So
yeah, the RDA one. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think our plan is to possibly write up our experience of trying to use that and what we found worked, what we found didn't, where we ran into issues, those sorts of things. But it's not 100% certain, which is why I've put a question mark. It was only discussed yesterday, actually.
Oh, okay. So it's fairly recent.
I mean, we have done the evaluation through PANOSC, with PANOSC doing with that model. But yeah, the idea of writing up a use case is a bit new for us.
Okay, but good
Thank
that you added this in any case. Good to know. Okay, so moving on. It would be EOSC Synergy, but I'm not sure if Jerry is here or anyone else from EOSC Synergy. No, I don't think so. So the next one would be NREFAIR. Do we have Maria Johansson?
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
Hello, good morning.
Morning. Yes, NREFAIR. Just going to the spreadsheet here, what I written down yesterday. Yes, NREFAIR. There was performed on a FAIR assessment exercise within NREFAIR last year for by the work package 5, and it was, as I heard, it was quite a complicated process as the research infrastructure within NREFAIR are also heterogeneous. But however, that's made this assessment, FAIR assessment, and the results of it is now being implemented into a kind of a knowledge base for NREFAIR. So to ease up the analysis of it and to regularly run this assessment easier and to get out some analysis from it. And the deliverable that I written down here in the spreadsheet describes quite detailed how this assessment was made. And I see that the link there to the report is not working, but we'll, yeah, we will fix that. So yeah, it's an ongoing process, I would say, with the FAIR assessment, and particularly with this work package 5 then. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good, thank you. And it's good that you already have something concrete. You have already written a deliverable of the first
first
series.
Yeah.
Okay.
First stage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
That's good. That's something that we'll be exploring definitely. And I see that yeah, there has been some added things to ESCAPE. Yeah, by Françoise. Yeah, it's the things that you already mentioned, I guess, partly in your presentation just a while ago, of the tests run in the RDA FAIR data maturity model.
Yes, maybe I can say a word. I was cut for a second. I work in ESCAPE also, and I work with Mark Allen. So I think I can say something about that because I was doing the tests basically. In the framework of package 4, which is to include the S3s in astronomy, astroparticle physics in EOSC through a virtual observatory, which is our interoperability framework, the disciplinary one. We have tested the criteria proposed by the RDA working group. And this has helped us to understand the characteristics of our own FAIR practices, which are very well established and shared by the whole community worldwide. So what we realized doing that is that our own, the real key things we want to do, the community wants, is to interoperate and reuse data. And findability and accessibility is just in support to interoperate and reuse. So it's not like when you have problem with reproducibility of research. In our case, it's really compare with other data and reuse. And finding is not based on PIDs in general, it's very dynamic with many criteria. So there is a discrepancy somehow between the usage of some communities, many communities, and what we do. And this is, we are a bit sensitive. We think that there is a need to have feedback of implementation when there are metrics, and the metrics define what is essential.
Yes, good, thank you. Yeah, I guess that's something also that is taken up in the Turning FAIR into Reality report, that it's also, you know, while developing metrics, you really need to ask for feedback and input from various domains and various stakeholders. For really asking for validation is really a good thing in this respect. So that's good. I see that we only have blanks for the FAIR champions, but is there still someone from that category that wants to say something? Do we have any FAIR champions here today? No, I don't think, as far as I see in this note-taking document, there aren't maybe anyone from that category here in this call.
There you are.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, this is Andy.
Hello. Okay, you're here. Good.
I'm here. Sorry, I was muted.
Okay. Go ahead, Andy.
Just comments. So I would like actually to come back to the discussion that you previously raised on the metrics and measuring things and this being perceived as criticism, and obviously, you know, that message should be avoided. On the other hand, I'm also very much in favor of pushing metrics, especially when it comes to certification, a bit stronger in the sense that, yes, we are trying to get wide acceptance and support for whatever we propose by making it easy to be accepted and easy to pass by. But I've seen also the downsides of these approaches in the sense that unless the metrics are really strict and unless thresholds for certification are strictly applied, maybe with different levels and degrees, everybody claims to be compliant and everybody ticks many boxes and is then very, very happy that we all fulfill the criteria. We're all very good repositories and we're all very fair, diluting the effectiveness. So we see this, and again, I'm not criticizing the metrics there, but we see this with some of the repository certifications where I have come to the conclusion that some repositories that carry a certain certificate still are not up to speeds to the ideal requirements that one would wish to have. So something like a maturity model approach or so might be helpful to encourage them to move up to higher levels. But in the first sense, being strict and saying no, you are not good is sometimes better than patting them on the shoulders and say, yes, you're on a good track, so we'll certify that you're basically fine and on the way. Sometimes being a bit strict is helpful.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also, since we're dealing with so many different scientific domains, I guess we need to consider also there is a quite fine, should I say, balance between qualitative and quantitative measurements. So some scientific domains, as we know, they are very based on around quantitative measurements and data. So we really need to see to it that well, mostly the qualitative aspects are the ones that we want to measure with the FAIR metrics, ideally. But yeah, so you need to really consider where the balance goes really between these aspects as well.
Even if metrics are qualitative, they should be quantifiable by experts in a subjective manner, but even then those quantifications should be in some form reproducible. So if you get a bunch of 10 auditors, 15 auditors assessing the same subjective criterion, the same qualitative measure, if they vary widely in their assessment, then either we need to train the auditors better so that they get a more consistent view of what subjectivity means, or we need to improve the metric overall. Because if qualitative judgments vary widely, they're useless. They're not measuring anything. Then they're just descriptive and up to the eye of the beholder. And if there is no common eye, then what is the use of it? So I agree there will be subjective measures, there will be qualitative judgments, but if they are not consistently measurable, then we probably shouldn't apply those. It's like teachers grading kids in school. If they vary widely, the grade is useless.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, so is there anything else we would like to address regarding this recommendation number 12 before we go further? If not, I suggest we go to the next one, which is recommendation number 13. Let's see if I can make that happen. Sorry. There. Now we have it. You should be able to see it now. It's on develop metrics to certify FAIR services. So the short description here is certification schemas are needed to assess all components of the ecosystem as FAIR services. Existing frameworks like Quartus Seal for repository certification should be used and adapted rather than initiating new schemas based solely on FAIR, which is articulated for data rather than services. Okay, so let's see what we have in this respect. Yeah, so firstly, there is a report from FAIR's FAIR on assessment of fairness of services. Do we have anyone from work package 2 from Fairs Fair? If not, I think I'm familiar enough with the report that I can just really shortly explain what this report is about. So there were 3 fair service assessment case studies made in this report. The services that were assessed were B2Share, which is a discovery service by UDAT. There were identifiers.org, which is a PID resolver on a registry for PID schemas. And thirdly, Clowder, which is a research data management system. So they tested a bunch of things, but some of the ones that I particularly know about is they tested how the services for the first, in the first sense, enable certain aspects of FAIR. For example, real basic things as adding metadata, for one. And then they also tested how the services respect the FAIR data principles in a sense where they necessarily do not enable these features themselves, but they do not interfere with them either. And the third particular aspect of the report was that they assessed the service on the basis of reducing or decreasing the fairness levels. So these were some of the approaches that they used in this report. They also pledged through a quite wide range of different fair assessments that have been made already. But this was their particular approach in doing so themselves. Okay, so the next one would be also on the metrics and certification task force coming from the EOSC Fair Working Group.
Yes, where am I? So yes, we have been working. We have one of the deliverables we have to produce is on certification for fair enabling services. So I think the initial task was about certification for data repositories, but we thought it was more important to discuss service generally. We have been in liaison and discussing often with Fairs Fair Work Package 2. We have attended some of the events they were organizing. They have attended something we organized in Budapest on the topic. And we will attend the session they have next week, I think, in the EOSC week, which is about certification. I think it's of data repositories, but we will be around at that time.
Okay, thank you.
So there is not, one of the issues is that it's not very developed. As you know very well, certification, except for the data repositories. And so that's life.
Yeah, but that, sorry.
Yes, sorry, for data repositories, I think that what is done on CTS, on Core Trust Seal and alignment on Core Trust Seal with FAIR is important. We know that some disciplines have their own assessment and their own certification system, for instance, the disciplines which are in EXIR, but CTS is well adapted, cross-disciplinary, cross-disciplines. So it's something which can be proposed to when people look for a certification tool for data repositories.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a good thing that many, as I see here, projects have been sort of supporting each other and been in liaison with each other, because we are all of us actually in the same boat here and in the very beginning phases of developing fair data metrics. So that's good that we have this kind of a.
Yes, in our case, it's clear that we have to rely on work which is done elsewhere as the working groups of the EOSC Executive Board. So we are keen to have good liaison with the other relevant projects. And it seems with Fair very well.
Yes, exactly. So this is something that has been realized also in the EOSC Nordic project, which would be the next runner-up. I think it's the same for most, that we need to join forces on this aspect. So here also, I mean, Andreas, you have explained it really nicely here that we do not know in the project of EOSC Nordic which the aspect would be, but most certainly it will be around the core trust seal, as far as I know, but maybe with some added features that are very FAIR specific. Is there something, Andreas, you would like to add to this point?
Not much really. It's unclear at the moment regarding FAIR services, which I interpret here at least as not repositories, but in general, services are dealt with a different work package and in our project, and I know that they are developing a maturity framework also to evaluate services and to certify them for EOSC use, but the FAIR aspects of that is presently not clear. But both our work and I think what we've done in Work Package 3 will certainly have a basis with the core trust.
Yeah, that's a really good point, that they are mainly focusing here on services, not so much data repositories, as far as I know. So that's a good point, that there is a difference. And in EOSC Nordic, we are in the Work Package 4 on FAIR data, just sort of directing our attention to data repositories in this respect. Okay, and then we have an I4OS. I guess Andreas isn't here now either, but I think, or is he? Do we have you here on the call? I think I see the name in the note-taking document now. Okay, no, sorry about that. But yeah, here in this matter also, they are relying on other work, which is really just fine. Yeah, that's basically it, I think, for this. Let's go over to Expense and Abigail.
So our work here actually, I think, is mostly around repositories. So I'm not sure if it does actually fit then in here, but it's looking at, and this is something we haven't started yet, it's happening quite a bit later in our project, but it's looking at certification schemes, including core trust seal and other assessment schemes. And the idea is to assess them and profile their application within our community, photon and neutron community, and to sort of do an open sort of self-assessment of where we are with that. But there's also going to be some work, I think, around developing potentially some schemes or some input into schemes, but it's all a little bit vague just now. So that's about all I can really say.
Okay, so is the self-assessment also based on your own sort of indicators or criteria?
No, so that will be drawing on the different schemes that are emerging and looking at how do we sort of, how can those be applied to our community, and how, according to our self-assessment, do we come up in terms of meeting those schemes and certification.
Okay, sounds really interesting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to NPRI FAIR and Maria.
should just find the unmute button, sorry.
No problem.
So yes, I just put into the spreadsheet here more or less the same that I just said about in the recommendation 12, but it is our work package 5, very long title of this work package, but common requirements and testbed for metadata services. So this group, this work package is working with this and very much together with the subdomains within WinRefer. We have several subdomains and yes, the deliverable that I mentioned before did include quite well questions about the assessment there included questions about the certification of services and so on. So this is really the work package 5's domain ongoing work at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I just see that someone has added a comment in the square above that the link you provided, you said that it was incorrect, but is so maybe that's why it requires some sort of a login or password for it.
Yeah, it shouldn't be like that. We've just asked yesterday. We just asked the WinRefer office project office to make that public, of course. So it should be fixed. I hope shortly. Yeah.
Okay.
Should be fixed.
Good.
Yeah. Sorry.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. I see some new information here under SHOC. So who do we have on behalf of SHOC here today?
So hello, this is Mari.
Hello.
I added the information there because I'm working with SHOC work package 8. And so we are also working with CoreTrust Seal, and there will be a report about certification solutions for social science humanities repositories, and in 22, so still quite a long way to go. But our work will also include feedback to CoreTrust Seal board on the CoreTrust Seal requirements. And I can see that Erzsébet from SHOC is also here. So do you have anything to add?
Yes, sorry. Hello, everyone. It took me a while to unmute myself, and sorry for being late. Not necessarily. We have the work package 8 has a deliverable published on an initial assessment of how the repositories belonging to the institutions affiliated with SHOC are compliant with the CoreTrust Seal, and it has very interesting conclusions, like it suggests that both the repositories, and so it makes recommendations for both the repositories how to scale up to be CoreTrust Seal compliant, and also on the other side, like how the CoreTrust Seal criteria should or may evolve in the light of what they found in the landscape in the SSH. So I can link the deliverable to the notes if it's relevant.
Yes, sure, please do. That sounded really interesting indeed, especially with the information regarding the scaling up of data repositories into becoming CoreTrust Seal compliant. That sounds really like an interesting piece of work that you've done. Thank you. Okay, I think we are all done. I think we have discussed all the updates regarding recommendation number 13, unless there is something anyone would like to add to this discussion before we move further. Okay, and then we can go to the recommendation 25 regarding implementation and monitoring of metrics. So here is a common short description saying agreed sets of metrics should be implemented and monitored to track changes in the fairness of data sets or data related resources over time. Funders should report annually on the outcomes of the investments in FAIR and track how the landscape matures. So the last part here is on the funder side, and they have quite many action points actually when it comes to this particular recommendation. But let's see what we have in terms of updates going on within our projects when it comes to implementing and monitoring metrics. So I guess the implementation part is the core thing in this respect here. We have on the Fairs Fair side a report on fair data assessment mechanisms to develop pragmatic concepts for fairness evaluation at the dataset level. That's going to be out in August this year. And then we have another deliverable on report on fair data assessment toolset and data badging schema coming out in August 21. So who could tell us more about these two deliverables? Pieces of work.
This is Ilona, so this is part from the work package 4 work, and this specifically is about evaluation of object fairness. And I think also my colleague Anu Surya is here. She's leading the work on this effort. Is there anything you would like to share with this group, Anu?
I think the deliverable is already there. I just update the date, which will be August 2021. By August 2021, we have to evaluate 5 COSTRA certified repository with the assessment tool we are currently developing. So there's a 2 assessment tool. One is to support manual self-assessment. This is mainly like an educational tool to raise awareness about FAIR. The second is an automated evaluation tool to evaluate published data set from the 5 repositories.
Okay, thank you. I guess the data badging discussion was in the Monday pillar session. So they were discussing this a bit more in depth because that one also included incentives in a way and more so rewarding of fair data and open scholarship contributions and attributes. Okay, so the next one up is the EOSC FAIR Working Group.
Yes, I think I probably already said that, the fact that if we implement and monitor metrics, we also have to monitor the evaluation of metrics. And so to gather feedback from the implementation of the monitoring and to evolve the metrics and the tools to do the measurements, taking the feedback into account. And I think it's very early to decide to use metrics and tools to measure metrics now. Depending on what you want to use them for, but I am afraid they have their own biases. And so I already said that I think setting up the appropriate governance about the metrics is really critical. But I think that there is also a need to test the tools and to understand the biases introduced by the tools.
Yes, good point. That is also something that is quite heavily, I would say, emphasized in the Turning FAIR into Reality report recommendations, that we need to be really careful when doing this task. So that's a really good point that you made. And then EOSC Nordic is next.
Yes. Well, yeah, this is exactly what we are doing. I mean, monitoring the metrics over the duration of the project time. And we have, so far we have basically sort of converged what we feel is a reasonable working evaluator and indicators that of course work on a very high and generic level. For instance, there is no testing of community specific aspects or metadata, but very much generic things. So our intention is to monitor how these repositories that we are studying, how they evolve during the project period, and hopefully to try to convince some of them to put some extra efforts into verifying their own repositories. And the challenge is that the evaluator that we are using is, of course, a continuously evolving tool, while we want to be comparing the same things. So we will basically freeze our version now and only evaluate based on this, or primarily evaluate based on that on the current version that we have arrived to. And yes, it's true that there are biases in the way that this automated evaluator works, but I think the alternative to spend a vast amount of efforts to manually evaluate this it simply wouldn't be feasible. It will even be challenging just to do it in a single epoch, not to mention doing it every month, for instance, as we intend to do with this evaluator that we are using now. So yeah, that's.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, a good point that you made about freezing the particular version that we're using, so that we can do comparison, and also it allows for reproducibility also of the results. So yeah, so there should definitely be a versioning that is really clear, but also have a timestamp of when these evaluations are being made. So that's really an important aspect in doing this particular work. Okay, I see that something has been added by Andreas from NI4OS. Metrics derived from onboarded services and repositories will be monitored at the pre-production platform before fed into the EASC. Okay, so thank you for that update. So I guess that there is some sort of a quality check before being eligible for the EASC in this respect, I guess. But I don't think we still have Andreas here, so I can, let's see if he's among the participants. Do we have Andreas?
I guess there are several Andreases.
Okay, there might be. That's maybe part of my confusion here. Yeah, okay. Let's move forward then. No worries. Okay, actually I can see any further updates in terms of the recommendation number 25. So we only have the recommendation 26 left. Let's see if I can change it here in my slides as well, just so that you can see the actions as well, if you would like to read through them as we go along. So the short text here would be, so it's on supporting data citation and next generation metrics.
I'm not sure whether I'm the only one, but I can only see still the actions of 12. Of recommendation 12. So
okay, really?
Don't seem to update.
Oh.
They updated
so sorry about that.
If I'm the only one, but
yeah, yeah, I think it doesn't really work that well with the slides changing, I guess. So sorry about that. Can you now see the actions 26?
Yes.
Really good. So sorry about this. Well, okay, so the short text here is systems providing citation, reuse, and impact metrics for FAIR digital objects and other research outputs should be provided. In parallel, next generation metrics that reinforce and enrich citation-centric metrics for evaluation should be developed. Okay. So let's see what we have here. I'm switching between different screens here, so that's why there is a bit of a delay. Sorry about that. Now I seem to have lost the correct recommendation as well. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, here it is. So I guess we can skip all the way to shock. I guess Mari, is it you who have added some text here, or?
So yes, I did add some information on the forthcoming deliverable, one deliverable that's already out, and a forthcoming deliverable. I'm not directly involved in these tasks, so not able to elaborate any details. But.
Okay, but still good that we have the
Yes.
link to the deliverable, and we can go and have a look at ourselves when we have suitable time. Okay, thank you. And then we have an update from a FAIR champion, Andreas Auber. You should be here on the call, at least.
I am. The comment is nothing important, it's just that we are currently preparing an updated report on all the implementations that data centers have provided so far for the automatic data citation recommendations of the RDA working group for dynamic data. And well, the report was plenty out for the Melbourne plenary, but with all complications, and so it's still in draft version. But I hope to be able to share it. It's now with the key authors that are contributing sections to it. I hope to be able to share it in a broader way soonish. But that might provide some input that might be helpful for other data centers that want to provide support for, because we're always asking researchers to cite the data that they use. But in order to do that properly and meaningfully, it should also be easy for them to do it. So, this chicken egg problem. Can we expect researchers to do it when the data centers do not support it, or do we expect data centers to implement it when there is no researchers actually doing it?
That's a really good
example
point.
of how the data centers implemented it might be helpful, especially where we focus. We also have a special section on each pilot study where we say, okay, how much effort did it take to implement it, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's always good to practice actually what you preach. So it's really good that you use it in your own activities as well to sort of assess it first and see how it works out. Great, thank you. I think we have gone through everything. We just have the 2 remaining questions, unless there is something that someone would like to still add to any of these above discussions. And if not, I'm gonna try and show you the 2 remaining questions that we have here. Can you now see the questions? It's the first question is what's missing in the recommendations and actions in this particular pillar? So can you identify something that should be ideally added to the recommendations that is not yet covered by them? Or do you think that everything is quite complete in this regard?
So here's Ilona from FAIR. I thought about the FAIR ecosystem as a whole. Obviously, it's covered in the Turning FAIR and Data into Reality report, but I think also that the registries will be a critical part, and at least I'm not sure if it is covered somewhere, but there will be a need to work on a registry model, because in addition to repositories and also in addition to objects, there also might be a need for a number of other entities to have a registry. And I know there's a lot of discussion about that. I don't know the details, but at least I think registries will be a critical part of the FAIR ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah, it's missing actually currently. So any other?
Yes, I may have, I began to write it, but I said it before. I think in things which have been said before, there may be indications about that. I think, I am not completely sure we have written explicitly in Turning FAIR into Reality that the monitoring has to be monitored and the monitoring tools have to be monitored.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure it's written explicitly, so it will have to be checked.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Anything else? Okay, so the last question here is any recommendations that aren't addressed at all? And if there aren't any, we don't need to look for any either. I mean, if it's comprehensive enough, that's only good. So I think that we have reached the end of this session. So this is, as I said in the beginning, this was the last one of the 6 pillar webinars. So the next session will be the concluding session on June 11th. So I guess many of you will also be taking part in that one. But for those of you who won't, I just want to say thank you to all of you, and we really much appreciate all the contributions and efforts that you've already put into the work, and hopefully you will see that there is a benefit of doing this, and you will get some substantial help in the day-to-day work in your projects and working groups as well as a result of this mapping exercise that we've done here. So is there something that I've forgotten, then Ilona can point out, but if not,
Thanks.
okay. Okay, but thank you very much again, and I hope to see most of you again at the final session then. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.